who are digging their cars out of ice right now. Our ranking member, and I think Vice Chair, is in the building, so he'll be back in a second. We have quorum, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I just wanted to let everyone know, last time I was wrong. I was running fast with scissors, and I did a request for bill introductions. We are past that point. We won't be doing that anymore. We can do it, but just can't work anything, so let's just skip all that altogether. This morning, what we want to do is have an opportunity to have a discussion of sorts. There were a couple of bills that we passed out, last time we had that Monday right before turnaround. One of our bills we actually had sent back to the committee, and I'd like for us to have a time to have more discussion on it, but not necessarily on the bill, more so the concepts that are inherent and included in the bill. So the nature of this conversation that I want to have today, I've invited the CTOs, the Chief Information Technology Officers for the legislative branch, as well as for the executive branch, as well as the judicial branch. So as they come up, they'll have an opportunity to, the nature of it is to talk about, if you remember, we had SB 291, which was our big cybersecurity bill. We had the sunset that was placed on it by the Senate last year, and then we passed out of this committee 2271, where we removed that particular sunset. But there are some amendments that folks wanted to make to that bill that we did not consider because it was more important that we got that bill out of committee with that sunset off of it and have time to discuss any concepts. So while we're not discussing the bill, because we cannot do that, we are going to have the opportunity to have this back and forth and give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have of these principals who might be in the room here today. I think that for the legislative Chief Information Technology Officer, the CTO, that's Tom Day, Eric Thiel, and John Langer. Then we are going to move to the section on the executive CTO, which will be Jeff Maxson. Is he with us today? Oh, okay, there you go, I see you over there. As well as with the judicial team, Ms. Marissa Bayless, I think I've seen you, and Mr. Alex Wong is joining us via Zoom, WebEx, I'm sorry. And do we have good comms with Mr. Wong? Fantastic, thank you. So that said, committee, are there any questions before we get started? Okay, then I'd like to start off this discussion by calling up Mr. Tom Day.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Tom Day. I'm Director of Legislative Administrative Services and also the interim CTO for the legislative branch at the present time. Second time around, but doing it again. The legislative branch, based on Senate Bill 291 last year, and I know we're not discussing the bill, but based on the information that was in Senate Bill 291, the legislative branch has taken the opportunity to implement many stages as far as the cybersecurity aspects for the Kansas legislature. We also had to change the URL for the Kansas legislature from .org to .gov, which was done approximately, we had been in the process of looking at that prior to the passage of Senate Bill 291 anyway. And that was done approximately June of last year, maybe a little bit later than that, but somewhere in the early summer time frame, we did change over. We kept the .org URL, and we're just transferring it into the .gov domain initially. And if you still type in ks.legislature.org, it will redirect to the .gov URL anyway. Numerous other things that we are working through Senate Bill 291, absent the sunset dates, we were still moving forward with those. Even if the sunset dates stayed in, we were still moving forward on all of those. We have also been looking at the potential of AI and what it would do for the Kansas legislature or its detriments to the Kansas legislature, either way. Those are numerous things that we have been looking at over the years, especially in the last couple of years as AI, artificial intelligence, has become more prevalent. And numerous states, in fact, Mr. Self and I, the reviser of statutes, and I were at a meeting 2 years ago when a couple of the legislatures were looking at the implementation of artificial intelligence. So there are many things that are going on within the legislative branch as far as security. Some people are a little uneasy about because of the amount of security we've had to put into our system. But we're working through those deficiencies and/or the basics of the artificial, or not artificial intelligence, but just the security measures that we're trying to keep out any spam, hackers, whatever, phishing expeditions. And as you know, as most of you probably know, we have implemented a software program called Arctic Wolf, which does help us block spamming, phishing expeditions, but it also helps us manage our email systems and our basic computer systems within the State House. Many other things that we're doing within the legislative branch include upgrading the KLIS, the Kansas Legislative Information Services system, upgrading that. The first phase of that is bill drafting. We are in the final stages of the implementation of a new bill drafting system. And one of the things that will be coming out of that KLIS system, the new KLIS system, presently the bills that you see in printed form are in a 6x9 size. That we will be moving over from our current word processing system into the system will implement Microsoft Word, which will make it much easier for the revisor's office and all of our IT staff to manage that. And the bill size will go from a 6x9 to an 8.5 by 11 size. So a normal paper size is what the bill will have. We are one of the last states in the nation that use a small sized bill. Most of the other states, if they print their bills, have gone to an 8.5 by 11 size for a printed copy of a bill. But printing is another issue with the bills or anything, whether it's in the committees, whether it's the bills, the journals, the calendars. The number of printed copies that the legislature does nowadays is much smaller than it was, say, 5, 10 years ago. We have reduced the amount of paper that we use as well. And I know I'm blending IT with a little administrative services here, but those are some of the issues that we also look at. And then our IT staff has been diligently working on, like I said, AI and security. We also do a lot of customer service for legislators, as well as all of the temporary session staff and the full-time staff. We do have embedded within the revisor's office and research department. They also have a couple of IT staff within there to service specifically their staff. But the main IT staff, the Office of Information Services for the legislature, also handles all the requests as well as helping the revisors and research and the legislative post audit as well. Mr. Chair?
If I may, Mr. Day, thank you for that exchange. If it came to what was SB 291, what is now House Bill 2271, I believe it is, and I know that there were some discussions from your team, I think, and you might want to give, I think, Mr. Eric a call, that there would be changes that your organization would be in favor of or disfavor would you or somebody from your team like to speak to that?
We're talking about House Bill 2270?
2271, but then I can't discuss 2270 because we can't further work. So if you'd like to wait to respond to any other discussion, I'd like to hold off your time so we can get to that part and guide the discussion to that point. But if you had any thoughts concerning just the major bill, are there any recommendations that you would like to see to the one that we already passed out? Because we do have an opportunity to have, it's already gone to the Senate. So if there are any changes to 2271 that you would like to see.
Mr. Chairman, we've had discussions with the executive branch, CETO, in the bill. And if I have the wrong bill, I apologize. But some of the information that was in the bill dealt with telecommunications. It also dealt with cybersecurity and security incidents. We're concerned that some of the language in the bill was general, and whether it covered some of the other information that we needed or some of the systems that we have, like our virtual meeting equipment and all of that, our telephony, whether it covered the legislative branch, whether they were wanting to take that over. After discussions, myself as well as a couple others within the IT staff have had discussions with the executive branch. They don't want to take over telephony. They don't want to take over video systems. They are trying to make this for the executive branch, but also overarching just as guidelines, I believe, and Mr. Maxson may be able to clarify that for everyone. But we believe we may be able to move forward with their assurances that our system remains part of the legislative branch. We don't have to become part of the executive branch as far as the IT systems, but they want to know what types. They want to make sure that the network is not, we don't put information into the network or systems into the network that would interfere with what they are trying to do as well. So if we were excluded, that would be okay with us. If we remained and we had the assurances out of the executive branch, as long as we can work with them and with no impediment types, I think we'd be okay as well. I might ask, Mr. Chair, if the Director of Application Services, Eric Teal, or the Director of Technical Services, John Langer, have any other comments to make about that as well, but or we may wait until after Mr. Maxson has had his opportunity as well.
Okay, and thank you for that. And I really do appreciate that you all have had those conversations offline. I want to thank the members of the committee that actually helped to facilitate that as well. That's in good keeping with the highest order of professionalism that we have. So thank you for hashing through that and working that out. I'm encouraged to hear that. And I'll leave it to you if your team wants to speak at this time or wait for Mr. Maxson, that's fine as well.
I think we're willing to wait on Mr. Maxson, and then we can, as well as the judicial branch, and see where they stand as well.
Look at you batting cleanup. Okay, I got you. All right, so committee at this time, before we let Mr. Day off the hook and get to Mr. Maxson as discussed, does anyone have any questions for legislative IT? Representative Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Day. A couple of questions about AI. Now, I'm a farm kid. AI traditionally has meant something a little different, and a few of you might get that joke, but I see a very, very great possibility in allowing AI to assist staff, research revisers, as well as legislators in pulling information out, looking through the statutes, asking the question, where do I find this in the statutes? As far as, I guess, collecting information, I have major concerns about AI creating content. Am I going to sit down and talk to my computer, say, I want a bill that says this, and it drafts it for me? I've got big concerns about that. I see a great advantage to the security piece of AI. I think you mentioned it a little bit. If we can implement some AI technology to kind of filter through some of those phishing emails and scams. But I guess my question is, what development do we have right now as far as either staff or legislators as far as utilizing AI technology? Will it be one single platform that we are secure and allowed to use, or do we all just use ChatGPT or whatever the different platforms are out there? Or do you have any comments on that?
We have been developing some initial policies on AI. As far as the right system, we're still researching that issue. I can tell you that there are some legislators already within the 165 in this building that are researching that and seeing what can be done with AI as far as the legislative branch. As I mentioned early on, a couple years ago, Mr. Self and I were at a meeting, and one of the issues with AI, and you touched on it a little bit, was the research of statutes and that kind of stuff. A couple years ago, when one of the states was researching that, some of the AI information that was coming up was incorrect statutory citations. Whether it was the state that they were from, or whether it was U.S. Supreme Court issues, cases, they had some wrong information. I believe that's been getting better as time goes on, but those are some pitfalls to AI as well. Now, it's a great tool. We use it. WebEx has a system that kind of uses that for any committee meetings. It will pull up a little bit of a transcript, not verbatim, but what all went on in the committee meetings. And we have that available as well. And for those of you that go out on the S drive to look at testimony and that kind of stuff, some of the committees have a testimony that's a transcript of the meeting that's put up there. And that is an initial AI transcript that comes out of the WebEx. And so we are diligently looking at that in between everything else we are doing within IT. And I don't know if Eric or John have any comments on that, but we do have, and I know Mr. Self may also have a couple comments here.
There you are, indeed. Mr. Self, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gordon Self, Revisor of Statutes. My office, from a standpoint of legal research and bill drafting, has been looking into the use of artificial intelligence over the last couple years. And just to give you a sense of it, and we're also in discussion with our Propylon, our vendor, with regard to the new bill drafting system and the utilization of AI in that sense. I attended a continuing legal education course on AI, and one of the things that was, I think, not surprising to me, but it sort of validated one of my essential points in utilization of AI, and that is what source are we using? You mentioned one source that would not be a reliable source to use to draft bills or do legal research because of the manner in which that particular AI source was put together. However, there are Westlaw being one, there are some LexisNexis, there are some sources that have a very reliable base upon which that we can utilize. And obviously any use of artificial intelligence in legal research or drafting would ultimately have to be verified and reviewed by, one of my revisors. But it is something that I think could be beneficial to both my office and to the legislature in general. But as any new tool, we have to be certain that it is appropriate for our use, and then all the parameters and verifications are done.
Thank you for that, Mr. Self. And I agree with you and Mr. Day when you're discussing that per Representative Smith's question. If you're going to look at what tool to utilize, number one, we need to make sure that it is verified, either from its programming and the back side of it, and it's secure, verifiable, things of that nature. Does it fit the bill? Does it do the job? And is it the approved solution that you would like to have on the network? So we have to run through that. Is it the standard that will be utilized? What's the process flow for it? And then are there any other acceptable contenders that you would still allow on the network if that's not the only show in town? So I think those are some things that we need to call through in discussion as we develop this discussion out. Representative Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a really interesting conversation, and obviously there are a lot of applications for AI in the legislature. I'm not going to pretend like we're all experts on AI. I'm sure we've all read in the news about things like hallucinations, and there's a lot left to be developed in AI. But as someone who represents the city of Topeka, of course my first thought is manpower, woman power. And I just want us to be really thoughtful as we move forward with this technology, that we're not pushing people out of their jobs, because so many state employees that work in the legislature live in Topeka or the surrounding cities, and they're invaluable, and I think that they choose to live here because they work in the legislature. And I'm fearful that if we dive too deep into replacing people, and dare I say even supplement people to a certain degree with technology, that they're going to leave my city because they won't have a reason to live here. So I just want to make sure that's on the record and is something this committee is thinking about. Hopefully we can find some kind of symbiotic relationship for staff and technology, but obviously the tentacles of these reforms are many.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Day? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Day. We appreciate it, and we'll hold you in escrow and listen until the rest of your team wants to ask another question. At this time, let's have Mr. Maxon from the executive branch, the CETO for executive branch. There he is. Welcome to committee, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jeff Maxon. I am the Executive Branch Chief Information Technology Officer. And so I'll kind of just do a similar deep dive and kind of some of the things Senate Bill 291. I know I did a brief presentation early, but kind of some background on where things are. So Senate Bill 291, again.
Before you jump in, Mr. Maxon, in the interest of time, let me guide the discussion if we can.
Yes, sir.
There were some amendments that you wanted to make to 291. I think that to 2271, which is what we call the new 291. After you conduct your overview, could you please get into that and flesh that out a little bit as well? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. So again, OITS is essentially so I run OITS, which is essentially the IT service provider for the state of Kansas, all three branches per statute and what we do. So we are the internet service provider for the state of Kansas, and we're also the telephone provider for the state of Kansas as well, including all three branches. That has been established in statute, and that statute goes back about 30 years. And why go into it? So with Senate Bill 291, it has looked at a broader IT consolidation within executive branch, and we are currently working with a partner who is Gartner to help go through an assessment of what that might look like and build a roadmap and what that might look like. And so that is also supported by the governor. And so she's looking at that, and she has also tasked me what other things within this effort for a broader consolidation do we need to evaluate? And some of that is existing statute out there. And so she has tasked me to look at places we need to start making some foundational challenges to further an IT consolidation, whether it is through 291 and that effort. There are other places where there's some consolidation. But as I mentioned, some of these existing statutes are over 30 years old. technology has changed significantly in 30 years, so some of the language doesn't capture new technologies or is still focused at very old technologies that we don't address. So, but as I'm looking at my intent, and the intent is not to fundamentally change the structure of the statutes, but to update them to modern, mere modern technologies. So as we look at things like cloud computing, that is replacing, legacy mainframe systems. So again, trying to look at what out there do we need to start addressing to essentially start laying the foundation for any broader efforts of consolidation. So the goals that we're looking at are finding efficiencies, increase security for the state, and as we see it, this is a whole of state approach. We're all intrinsically tied together in some form or fashion, and that even includes extending out to the counties. So one of the statutes that we look at about OITS being the network service provider, we actually provide connectivity to all 105 counties in some form or fashion to support motor vehicles, support KBI for ks connections, as well as most cabinet agencies have some interactions, whether KDHE with their public health environment. So when we look at counties, we see one entity. We have the infrastructure, so we run the largest private network in the state of Kansas. Because we do support local governments as well. But as we're looking at, there are a lot of places where we need to find efficiencies and become better at what we're doing. So one of the other things the governor has also tasked me to is also make sure that when we look at IT, in the modern environment, IT is service provider to the agencies as a business customer kind of relationship. So we're really trying to morph how we provide services to all entities within the state. We're trying to treat it as a business where we have agreements with each agency, set expectations, and so we're not kind of this captive customer type model. So everything we're trying to do is advance, create efficiencies, and work to better how we're providing services to all customers essentially, which is all county governments and all state government as well. So, but that's kind of the background on where we're going. Kind of following up on some of the other pieces. Again, as we look at things, we're not trying to holistically change what has already been established from a structure perspective and how we interact with the other branches, things like that. We're just trying to modernize or make requests to modernize language so it is not dated back to like the mainframe structures. So with that, again, mentioning, AI is a big topic. We were one of the first states to actually put together an AI policy for a state level. So we actually did put a statewide executive branch policy for the use of artificial intelligence, and we were actually one of the first states to set that forward. Where it is moving so fast, we're getting ready to release version 2 here in the next few months. That is something that we're working on. As I mentioned, it is moving so fast, we're trying to stay in front of it as much as possible. Typically, you look at a policy and you set that about every 3 years. This is something we're probably going to have to be, on a yearly basis. So we are actively involved in that. We are one of 2 states that are on the national, AI Safety Commission. So us and the state of California are the 2 states, but there are a lot of universities and a lot of industry that are on that. But we're trying to lean into this best we can because this is where technology is heading. And to Representative Simmons, your question, we see it as a tool to augment the existing workforce and not necessarily replace the workforce. So it is another tool in the toolbox where IT can help provide additional efficiencies, allow us to do more with the existing. We see it. We are kind of already a skeleton crew in places already. As an executive branch. So we see it as a tool to augment our capabilities. So with that, sir, I'll keep it brief and stand for questions.
Very well. Committee, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Jeff Maxon, the CETO for the executive branch? Seeing none, I have a quick question for you.
Sir.
You made mention that, I like you addressing Representative Sinema's question because do you see any opportunity there for retraining, skills training, since you say you're on the skeleton crew, to use your words?
Yes, sir.
I know that there's some difficulty hiring
Yes, sir.
for these positions. Can you tell the committee a little bit about that? What does that look like? What opportunities might we have coming down the line to help you out?
Yes, sir. Thanks, sir, for the question, Mr. Chairman. As we look at one of the areas that the state lacks as a whole, especially from the technology side, we do not have a comprehensive training program to train people on technologies. So, for example, some agencies are able to, if they have staff, if they have questions, for example, going back to kind of the shift from maybe typewriters to word processing, there's a huge shift where if you could type, that was a huge skill set. AI, we kind of see that as same. So even training people on the basics, the Words, Excel, PowerPoint, things like that, those are very powerful tools. But unless you have training on them, you don't know all the functions and features. How do we get better at that? AI is another kind of extension of that, where we do need to find ways to train our workforce to leverage that tool to help them with their productivity in those spaces. And that's something we're hoping to explore as we look at this IT consolidation. How can we create maybe a training department to train on these technologies and offer that up to the agencies or other stakeholders? In some cases, on the cybersecurity side, we have been very successful at that, and not just even the state side, but even training our local government partners as well. So that is something we see a huge value in that we need to get better at as well.
And when it comes to that training of your local government partners and across the agencies itself within the executive branch, is that like an all-call? What's the response rate, or is that a cyclical type of training?
Yes, so it, depending on the type, so it starts out various, we lunch and learns, and it's kind of the key. We try and put a calendar together. We'll be introducing some of those around AI and data, as well as we've hired a chief data officer. But in terms of like our local government partners, we've been leveraging like some of the federal grant dollars from the Homeland Security program to put on cybersecurity trainings and open it up to local governments. And usually that is a 100% fill rate almost every time we offer those up with our partners.
That's extremely smart. That's a good way of doing business. Committee, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Maxon at this time? Okay. Mr. Maxon, I want to thank you for coming through and presenting to us. I know that there was some concern about consolidation of power, if you will. And thank you for clarifying, you know, the concepts of what it is that you're asking. But I would ask you to, bless you, to stick around in case there are any questions that you need to answer in particular.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Committee, at this time, I'd like to call up Ms. Marissa Bayless from the Judicial. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Oh, redundancy built into the system. I love it. Okay. Mr. Alex Wong, are you with us on WebEx?
Chair, I am on WebEx. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. It's good to hear from you, sir. Hey, there you are. Okay, now I've known this thing to act up a little bit, so bandwidth is kind of iffy. If need be, you drop video and go straight to audio, okay?
Sounds good. Just let me know. Just let me know.
Yes, sir. Your opinion is valued. So again, we had Mr. Maxon come up, and I know that Judicial had a couple of concerns with some of the language that he had proposed in an earlier bill that we are not going to be discussing. But I didn't have a chance to really hear your team out on what your proposals were. If you'd like to give us your quick brief on that, and then maybe guide the discussion to those points, we truly appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am Alex Wong, and I am the CTO for Judicial Branch. And thank you for the opportunity for us to elaborate some of our intention for this bill as well. So quickly go into first talking about, we just talked about the term redundancy and bandwidth, right? And those are the things that we are concentrating on for this upcoming years, because we are starting to provide e-court services centrally from Topeka to all the counties in the state. And so network connectivity, redundancy that we just talked about, and the performance of those redundancy is going to be critical for all the state court to be able to function correctly. And a lot of those state court, their employees are not directly hosted at the courthouses. It depends on the size of the courthouses. So some of them are not in the same location. And there are also judges that signs warrants in the middle of the night because warrants happens anytime. So they might have to work from home. So we've talked to Jeff in the executive branch about how we can provide those redundancy and services, especially on the network connectivity to those edge cases. And definitely, we are not trying to duplicate or replicate any existing infrastructure that's already in place. So that is not our intent, right? Our intent is look at any other cases that we will have to be more flexible, and we needed to provide those services, let's say using wireless connectivity, the cellular network, into those locations that is not directly in the courthouses, so that we can make sure that all these different staff and judges that is working in different locations are also able to get to the information that they need with redundancy, so that in case any primary connections at home went down, that they are still able to use other communication channel. So we are looking for flexibility in that area, looking for potential exemption for anything that is not duplicating, replicating, and definitely not causing any technical compatibility with the existing network with OITS. So that's our intent from that perspective. I also want to mention about the GenAI topic that the other two CETO also touched on. Just last week, Chief Justice Lupert just released an administrative order for the whole executive branch to set up a work group to study the use of GenAI in judicial branch, both internally and externally. So the committee will have justices, judges, attorneys from different areas to help us look at different use cases and understand the risk and understand how we need to put policy together to guide the usage of GenAI. So another fascinating topic that is going to move forward in judicial branch as well. So I want to keep it brief to see if there's any other questions that I can stand to answer.
Committee, this time, thank you, Mr. Wong, for that. And I tell you, you're speaking my love language when you talk about redundancy, flexibility. And I know that, and thank you for explaining the exemption piece. You're looking for judicial IT exemptions from anything that is not duplicative, anything that's not redundant. And there's a concern, right? Right now, it looks like the landscape, we have everyone stovepiped into their own into their own spaces, if you will, their enclaves for their IT services. I would like, before I get to the questions with everyone here, if they have questions for you, if you can explain a little bit what you envision as far as the things that can be expanded upon and made more efficient, such as cybersecurity. What do you see the role of your shop in that? How does that interplay look across the three branches of government? Is that something that you want to be exempt from? Because as we go and look at this this bill, we want to make sure that it is addressing the concerns and the needs that the state of Kansas has, right? But also your particular footprint as well.
Yeah, so this is where I'm going back to Senate Bill 291, where I think that bill specifically have that baseline set up from a cybersecurity angle by using .gov for our domain names, having CISA to come in and audit us annually, and reporting all the cybersecurity expenses, putting together inventory information for security assessment. I think that's all the things that already set us up for working together with the other branches on that. So we don't have any concerns in that area. I think we see that as a definite advantage for us to work together in the cybersecurity area for sure.
That's excellent. Do you see any opportunity, I'll open it to you first, any opportunity for cost savings with lifecycle management of end devices or stacks or anything like that?
I think from a cybersecurity angle, there's a lot of things that we can work together, especially previously I worked with executive branch, so I understand the volume that executive branch is procuring, and that's definitely volume that we don't have in judicial branch. So leveraging master contract that we can all work together to utilize the same contract from the executive branch and allow the other branches to leverage those volume discounts, I think is definitely going to provide cost saving in those areas.
Outstanding. Committee, any questions for Mr. Alex Wong, the CETO for the judicial branch? Well, apparently, Mr. Wong, you have stupefied us and amazed us into stunning silence. That is the most efficient brief I've ever. Okay, thank you so much for your help and your time here today. Committee, do we have any other questions for either Mr. Maxson, Mr. Day, or Mr. Day's team? And I do want to allow the opportunity for Mr. Day's team to ask any questions or concerns that they might have as well. No? Okay, Representative Simmons has one question, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure who could best answer this. Perhaps you, Mr. Day, yes, you're the expert. You talked about other legislatures adopting technology, changing different paper for the bills. Is there a legislature that you think Kansas could follow? Should we research in our free time, see different reforms they've made? Any state house you're impressed with?
As far as a good reference type,
State houses that might have adopted different technology that you think is worthwhile, or different steps they've taken?
I'm not aware of anything that just stands out from another state. Each state is so unique. And that's one of the issues we have as we upgrade our own system is, you find a vendor, and we've been working with this vendor now for 14, 18 years, whatever it is, almost 20 years, actually, from the very starting point. They had to get in tuned to the statutory construction for Kansas as to how they build the system. Each state is like that. One of the closest states that we have with our current vendor and the other state that has the same vendor is North Dakota. We were the two first states that Propylon used, that Propylon had as their vendors, as customers. And our systems are very similar, but they're also different because of the statutory construction within that state and how the legislature operates and those types of things. So as far as just a state that stands out, yeah, each state has their own qualities that you might go out and look at and say, wow, that's a wow factor for that state. As we modernize our own system, we are also looking at something of those, whether it's the web page of the Kansas legislature, whether it's the internal workings within our KLIS system, we're looking at something that'll also give us that wow factor. As you look at other states' websites, a legislature is a legislature in a general term. But each one has their own unique circumstances, and some of the states had started out with virtual technology before COVID. Alaska being one, because of the size of the state, and Juneau is so landlocked. They were one of the first, and we had looked at them when we started doing virtual technology. And then there's others now that some of them do virtual streaming, some of them only do audio streaming, or they do virtual streaming of their chamber activity, but they only do audio of the committee. And then there's the others that do vice versa. It's only of the committees, and then as far as virtual video, and some of them just do audio of the chambers. So, but everybody's moving towards more of a audio-video combination for everything. But as far as one particular state, nothing really, like I said, each state has its own little uniqueness. I mean, I sit and I'll watch Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, every once in a while Nebraska, but Nebraska's its own animal, so, yeah. And Mr. Chair, if I might, and I hope I answered, or at least responded to Representative Simmons' questions and comments. One of the comments I made earlier when I was up here dealt with excluding or exempting the legislative branch. I was mixing both bills together. So, there's some issues in 2270 that maybe we do need or don't need exempted, but like Mr. Wong made a comment, if all three branches work together, we find those areas where we can all benefit as a state versus each branch having its own. But each branch also needs its own as well, and the judicial branch, as we've seen, needs a lot of autonomy as well in certain areas.
And thank you for that. I would tend to agree. and this may be a question for yourself. You were probably in the loop on it, and maybe it may be for Mr. Maxon, I'm not sure. But when it comes to, you guys may mention that you have had those collaborative opportunities to speak and hammer out some things. And Mr. Wong may mention that, you know, he looks forward to more opportunities to do the same, as you were just bringing up. Where does that occur? Do you all have a standing meeting for that? Or is that a work group that you handle? Or is that something done in coordination with JCIT?
Mr. Chair, if I might, it's kind of a combination of all that. We have no standing meeting per se. The Information Technology Executive Council, until Senate Bill 291 passed, included all three branches as voting members. All three CTOs rotated the chairmanship of the Information Technology Executive Council. And until 291 changed, and basically it's now executive branch base, but the two CTOs are still on it, as well as the legislative members, although the judicial branch and legislative branch CTOs are non-voting members. The four legislative members are non-voting members of ITEC, but we still have a say at the ITEC meetings for the policies that are being changed, whether it's all-inclusive, whether it helps only the executive branch or it helps all branches. So we have those forums also. But like I said, there currently is no standing meeting between the three branch CTOs, but that is something that we could go back to. There used to be, but we don't any longer. But we do have JCIT, we do have ITEC, and I believe Mr. Maxon could clarify this if I get it wrong, but there is an Information Technology Advisory Board, and I don't know if that is still in existence with the changes to ITEC, but it is the executive branch side. The Information Technology Advisory Board.
Thank you for that. We'll look into that, and I'll see if there's opportunity for at least, you know, the leadership of this particular committee to not be a voting member, but be invited into those meetings, because I think it is a value-added proposition for us to help guide this discussion, and any committee members that would want to take a look at that, so that we're not doing things in a fashion that's disjointed. We want to base our comments and our considerations in reality, and I think if there's goodness happening in those meetings, it'll be conducive for us to be there as well. I want to thank you for your time here today. Committee, did we have any other questions for any of the CTOs that have appeared here today? Okay. That said, I thank you for your time and your help today. Committee, I want to let you know that while we were not able to get 2270 across the floor, it was returned to the committee. I asked them to return it to the committee, and the reason for that is simple. If the bill remained out on the House floor past turnaround, it would have died and we wouldn't be able to handle it. But once we return it back to the committee, it stays alive below the line here in the committee. So next session, we will have that opportunity for the 2-year biennium to either handle that bill or something like it, however that works out. I know that there are individuals that had questions about some of the concerns that were raised with the language, and that's what we've tried to handle and air out here today. If you have any other questions or concerns, I ask you to please reach out to the members or to the staff, KLRD. They can help you as well. And yes, tell her we said hello. I don't know, that's not candy, y'all. That's donuts. That's donuts, that's what I'm saying. That's donuts right there. Bless you. But we can have that opportunity to do that. And I do want to let you know that we are going to be approaching the leadership to ask for a little bit more time over the off session to handle some ideas as well. That said, I would also ask you, as the ranking member did make mention of, and I think it was also Mr. Day, when you're going to your different conferences, conventions, and things like that, find your counterparts and ask those types of questions of them. Hey, what's your best practice? Have you guys tried to achieve this? How did you do it? And, you know, call in and collect ideas and bring them back to us, okay? That said, anything for the good of the body? We are adjourned.